So .NET, yeah. So .NET is the framework, and it's a series of code and services that actually run your code. So it's actually what takes your code and runs it against the metal. So it's like, hey, I'm going to write some human readable code, stuff's going to happen, and then something's going to run my code on the machine. And that's where .NET framework comes into play. That is equivocal to the Java JVM, to the Node runtime engine, to V8, if those words mean anything to you. It's what's actually is running your code. So that's kind of the whole big umbrella term. It's kind of like a whole suite of things that we get with that. Because we, at the end of the day, we're writing stuff that gets run on a machine, right? Your JavaScript is being run on a machine. Your C# is going to be run somewhere on a machine, because that's all a server is. A server out in the cloud is just a machine that's running your code. So it's a motherboard, still has a C drive, still has all the same stuff that you're used to. It's just on a rack somewhere in a closet. So the .NET framework is just a suite of tools that actually runs your code. How are we feeling so far?
So C# are the commands, .NET is the machine that's doing that.
Yes, we're going to grow that definition a little bit, but that's pretty much what it is that we're going to be writing our stuff in C#, and then we're going to be compiling it
In .NET?
to be able to run on the .NET framework.
Okay.
So that compiling is the translation. So the .NET framework, the .NET runtime, never actually sees our pure C# code.
Does React see pure JavaScript?
It does.
Okay.
That's because
Well, React is also a library and not a framework, isn't it?
Right. So Webpack, the build tools, it builds your JavaScript, your JSX files, your JavaScript, into code that is readable by its runtime. React's runtime is the browser's JavaScript version. In Chrome, it's the V8 engine. I forget the rest because it really doesn't matter. It's 2018. But it's one of those, like, it's going to be run inside your browser. So the code that's actually being run from your React stuff, like the code you write in React, is a shadow that is getting run. Have you ever actually looked at like the minified files that your React code produces? It's nuts. Like, does someone have a React site? Do I have a React site? Just
check out my portfolio.
What's the URL?
Justin-Oliver.com.
Justin-Oliver.com, right?
Just an Oliver wrestling.
Nice.
I need to go fix that.
Right, fine.
We'll
We'll just pop over to mine. Yeah. So like, it's good enough.
Mine is just a gray page that says coming soon, so yours is better.
Yeah, I like mine. It's not finished yet, but it's good enough.
What do you host your domain on?
My domain is through Google. My actual hosting is through Netlify, and the code is up on GitHub. I have it hooked up, so when I push to GitHub, it automatically deploys.
Ooh, fancy.
All right?
Do we learn how to do that?
What web server do you pay?
Netlify. But anyway, so like this is a React app. If I come in here to my static folder, into my JavaScript.
I'd love to do this. Sources.
Yeah, the actual stuff here. Here's my code that's getting run.
It almost looks like a Facebook page.
That's that was half the point. So like, let's never show. Can I get this to be a bit bigger to illustrate the point? But like, this is JavaScript. Did I write this JavaScript? No, I did not. I wrote good, easy to read React code. It was compiled into something that was then run someplace else. That same idea is in C# and in .NET. Is that we're writing our code and in the human readable language of C#, and then that gets compiled into bytecode and that's a .dll file. I'm sure Some of you all have seen that before. And then what happens is that DLL gets run by the runtime. So that extra stage of compiling does a lot of stuff for us. We didn't really have that here. We did a little bit, because we did convert it from JSX to JavaScript. Did you ever get an error that just like, I can't compile this, go fix this error? Syntax error. Maybe a naming convention's off. There are certain rules set up. In JavaScript, we all know that those are pretty much optional. We could turn those off. In .NET, you can't. So there's a whole bunch of stuff in .NET that we truly care about, like typing. Typing is a big thing here. And that's something that kind of y'all aren't really used to. So when I say typing, we know that variables have types, right? In JavaScript, we don't care what those types are. We just go const x equals blah. In .NET, we do care.
It's statically typed?
It is a statically typed language it's pretty
You
cool.
never get a straight answer with that in any language. You never get a straight answer.
So Java, statically typed.
Java is, okay.
Bam.
Okay.
Go, statically typed. Damn. .NET has something really cool. They've really embraced something called generics inside of their language design. Level 2 topic, generics, is not only are variables and their data dynamic, but also their types can be dynamic as well, but also static at the exact same time. So you can change the type of something at compile time.
Cool.
Not at runtime, but at compile time. So that's pretty awesome in my opinion.
Your trainable bot, is that like a machine learning project?
It is. It's a trainable bot written in C#. It's a rewrite of a project that I did in college for an AI class. My basic one was in Java, but since then I've learned to really dislike Java and the whole Java ecosystem. So I rewrote it in .NET.
Where are you hosting your page?
What?
Where are you hosting your page?
Netlify. What is this? This is actually a trainable dog. So I built a dog that you can kind of train. Yeah, like sit, stay, and it looks at the environment. So like, is it daytime? Is there a stranger outside? Is there a stranger inside? Did my owner say stay? Did my owner say attack? Like there's a whole bunch of like fields. So what it is, it's a classifier at its core. And all that is a giant lookup table with wildcards and percentages of what's right. Then what you do is as it does stuff, you go, that was a good action. And it'll boost that action. Or you go, that was a bad action. And it'll negatively boost that action.
So this is something that you're manually feeding training data then instead of like with some neural nets where you're like, here's 10,000 images or something like that. It's very much like you say manually like, good job, bad job.
But then you can create this training sets of like, I want to train an attack dog. Here's my training sets. Go, release that. Or like, I want to train a good house dog for a family. Train it. Here's a training set for that.
Cool.
So it's all of that. And so my next step would be for this to kind of randomly evolve the neural network as we go. For now, it's just kind of randomly generating stuff. And it works. I love it. And it's really good talking to it, too.
Does it still run? Or
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's storage. You can pull it down and run it today.
That's super cool.
Is this .NET Core? It is .NET Core. Bot Core. Haha. Anyways. Statically typed languages. So any questions to what I've said so far? All still feeling good?
No, but if they're...
Are you sure?
I think GitHub Pages is down is why my site's down.
He's mad at his page.
Oh, yeah. Apparently, like, GitHub's down.
If I pull up some pages, it'll remain paused.
GitHub status.
Well, you were just looking at your project on GitHub.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. October 22nd. Yeah, they're having some issues.
Oh, yeah, GitHub Pages is paused.
Yeah,
That's why mine's out there. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't anything I did.
I believe you. So that's kind of the high level gist of C#. We write C#, compile it. It looks at our types, at our syntax, at a couple of other things, and goes, your code's valid. Then compiles it into a optimized DLL. And that optimized can be optimized for one of two things. One, debugging, which is good for development, or two, production. Production is a lot faster. There's some information missing to kind of make it run a lot faster.
And that's when it's out in the world.
Yes. So whenever we get to deployment, we'll be building our app for production and then deploying the production version of it.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the general idea. There are two pretty much big high-level lanes in the .NET world, and that's a good thing. The first one is what's called the .NET Framework. The .NET Framework is the traditional Windows-only powerhouse of the .NET world. This is a thing that was started back around 2000. This has C#, VB, F#. This is kind of like, this is the .NET that most people talk about.
Is that the one you did the crash course in?
No.
No. Okay.
No. I do crash courses in .NET Core because .NET Core is the better one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I thought you pulled something up and you said this is an older way.
Oh, yeah, that day. That day that you all...
Was that .NET Framework?
That was .NET Framework.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it's...
What happened to like, I've heard of like C++, C++, and all that. Is it just older stuff?
Yeah,
Is
so...
it related to C#?
Yeah, so the, kind of a brief history was that what happened was that Microsoft wanted to get to the marketplace and kind of do things with it and kind of be there. They knew, and the one thing that Microsoft has always been good for, and some developers will harshly disagree with this, Microsoft, in order to get their stuff out there, loves developers. They have to. They know that developers are the key to making a great OS. Why? Because if developers love the OS, they'll make apps for that, and people want to consume those apps.
I was just watching like the CNN things around about the 90s and 80s. They're on Netflix now.
Yeah.
Like the 95 coming out and all that was
Yeah.
like the biggest thing ever.
Oh yeah, like they have like
how ruthless Bill Gates is, and
yeah.
the
Oh, yeah.
lawsuit for the anti-monopoly or antitrust thing.
Yeah.
all that's in there.
Oh yeah, like they're like the history of Microsoft is such an interesting kind of facet. It's unbelievable.
Apple too.
Oh yeah, like those tech giants, like so interesting. But at its core, Microsoft knows, hey, we want to love developers. So C and C++. Has anyone worked in C and C++ before?
I have looked at them before.
I've seen a file.
Yeah.
And how does it look?
Scary?
Yeah, it doesn't look good. It's scary. It's not fun. It's tough to work in. Like straight up difficult to work in.
There's older versions.
They're closer to the metal.
They're built directly on top of C, correct?
So C was the original language, and then as we grew and as machines got better, we built C++. C++ added object-oriented programming. There are a few flavors in there, but overall it added object-oriented programming. Y'all talk about object-oriented programming. What is it?
It favors objects, like things that are like this is a thing, rather than a bunch of. I may be wrong, but my understanding of functional programming, which in my current understanding is the kind of the opposite of object-oriented. Functional is like trying to get as much as you can into one line, getting as much functionality into as little as possible.
Okay.
But that I don't know if that's right or not.
It's not, but like that's
Cool.
that's such an interesting observation that you drew to that conclusion, because that's a very valid conclusion to draw to, because that's what it looks like on the surface.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, here's a very cool functional one-line solution. It just so happens that people who love functional programming also love one-line solutions.
Okay.
That's just kind of
Okay.
like that's like a nifty side effect.
Well, I know like Python and Ruby and
Well, yeah,
not quite JavaScript are like object-oriented languages, and I believe C# is as well.
C# is really object-oriented. Yeah, you're gonna get very comfortable with that idea in the next couple weeks.
Okay.
So yeah, it's working with everything's an object, versus how like JavaScript you could just write functions. It's more free-flowing. Because JavaScript is a prototypal language at its core, some functional stuff as well. But C# is a very object-oriented language. So that's where C++ comes into play. So C++ with objects was a thing. Java started to become a thing as well. And developers are like, hey, this Java thing's pretty cool. So Microsoft is like, well, we don't like Java. We don't want to deal with that mess. Because there's a lot like Oracle and Sun and stuff like there's a lot of mess there. But we don't like C++. It's not good for developers. So let's take the best of C++. Let's take the best of Java and make our own language. And that's where C# comes from. Anyone know why it's called C#?
That means +1, doesn't it?
So
no, that's C++.
yeah. So it's C++. Is there a whiteboard marker in here by any chance?
Let's Google it.
That's a good idea. Eat them too. Oh, man.
I need to fix that sooner rather than later.
These are all in the
is there an image? Because it's actually a really cool thing. So they're like, hey, so since C# is an iteration on C++, it's C++++, and whenever you stack the 4, you get an octothorpe, which, who's a musician? What's the octothorpe?
It's a sharp. It means that you raise the pitch of a note by 1/2 step.
Exactly. So it's the plus. It's a half step above C++. This is always like my favorite bit of trivia.
But it's represented by a pound symbol because sharp isn't actually on the keyboard.
Right.
Is it true that you can do anything that you can do in C, C++, in C#?
Correct. Yeah, so like C++ has like pointers, they have reference values, they have really like bitwise operators, like all that other, like all the stuff that's in C++ that's really awesome and really efficient. You can also do it in C#.
So if you learn C#, you can effectively write a C++. You can accomplish the same thing.
Yep, it's pretty awesome.
That was one big thing that
Yeah, which is like this C style language is super popular and super awesome for that reason. Is that it's very like influential across other things. Have you seen the family tree of languages? I'll blast it out this afternoon. But it's like what all kind of inherits from the C language, and C# is like in the middle of all that stuff. So like Go, Java, to an extent Ruby, Ruby and Python as well.
Ruby and Python.
Yeah. But it's stuff like any sort of like curly bracket semicolon based language. You'll like, oh, I can be productive in this thing.
was Ruby around when you started to develop in C#?
Yeah, I just happened to land in a .NET shop first. That's it.
Just curious.
Yeah.
When did you?
I landed in a .NET shop. Yeah, my first job was in a .NET shop, and I kind of like, oh, okay, works for me.
How many years ago?
10, 11, 10, 10.
I live in Overwatch too.
Look
I
at
talk about Shades.
Oh yeah, 10 years ago.
Yeah,
Such an interesting thing.
10,
I can't explain
11
it.
years ago. Yeah. Well, mine has the date and the month,
Yeah.
but like the year does not.
Out of the question.
Yeah.
What watch is that?
Garmin something or other.
Are you able to do front end UX with C#?
So you can sort of, but it's mostly a backend language. So like C# is backend language, period. So you can do front end stuff, and that's what I was showing y'all, Razor and stuff for that crash course thing. You can do it, and it's entirely possible. It's just not as smooth.
I definitely did that before. That's all that I know.
Yeah.
It was very rudimentary. There
Yeah.
was like an input and a button,
Yep.
text display.
So you're talking about WinForms. What's cool about C# is that you can use it to write on a variety of platforms. It's very built to be cross-platform. You were creating native Windows app with that, which is the input buttons and the buttons and you can do a bunch of really cool stuff with that.
So this is a view that I have of C# as a language that I would like to see if it's correct or not. My understanding of a big plus of C# is that you can write an app in it, and with that same code base, with relatively minimal changes of like what's wrapping it or things like that, you have like an iPhone app, Android app, Mac OS X app, Windows app.
Yep.
Okay.
That is using a framework called Xamarin.
Okay.
Xamarin was a company that Microsoft bought up. That's like, hey, you can write your C# apps, or you can write your native apps in C#, and then write a very thin presentation layer using the Xamarin language, which is conveniently the same language for WinForms. Then it will compile down to the actual runtimes for the given environments.
So would that be like Objective-C and things like that?
It compiles down to stuff like that. So like React Native, it might still be this way, it may not, but when it first started, like all like Ionic, React Native, all those like native JavaScript stuff, all they really were, they were just dedicated browsers. And that's it. So like they just had a URL and they were just pretty much a JavaScript runtime. So it wasn't actually running native code for phones, but it was running JavaScript on a JVM inside of an app. So it wasn't the fastest. It wasn't really optimized. But Xamarin's like, no, wait, you know what? Fuck that. We can do some native code here to make our apps actually run with the native libraries, so we're going to make them run a lot smoother and faster. React Native might do that now, not 100% on that. But when it was first started, the whole like write once, run anywhere kind of things. That's how JavaScript did it.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I'm really excited.
So
So .NET Framework, Windows only stuff. Yeah, that's the powerhouse. About 3 or 4 years ago, Microsoft was like, wait a minute, developers are leaving .NET. Actually, 5 or 6 now. We need to fix that. So look at why they were leaving the .NET Framework. Windows was going through Windows 8 at the time. You know, I'm like the only developer that loved Windows 8. I am. I will defend that to the day. Yeah.
Can you get that anymore?
No, but like Windows 8 was a thing. They were still everything was still closed source. Everything was Windows only. Developers were liking open source systems. They were switching to different hardware for development. A whole bunch of stuff happening. Microsoft's like, wait a minute, we need to make a change. So what happened was that they're like, okay, .NET Framework, that's fine. Keep on sailing. We're going to start something new. Start a new rewrite of .NET called .NET Core. Now this .NET Core is a complete rewrite for the modern web. So it's all the best practices that were kind of pioneered and explored and really refined in other paradigms and languages. Microsoft was like, we can do that. We'll do that the C# way and it'll be better. And now we have .NET Core. Came out roughly 2 or 3 years ago, completely open source, completely cross-platform.
C# itself is not open source, though, correct?
But
I think parts of it might be.
C# for .NET Core is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's actually, so C# 7 just came out recently. I think 8 may have come out. But like that, the new stuff is all open source.
But not like the legacy.
Legacy,
stuff.
like .NET Framework, that's not open source.
Okay.
.NET Core is open source. So if it has to deal with the .NET Core, open source.
So does that mean that the most current iteration of C# is completely open source?
Should be. I don't know for certain, but it should be.
Cool.
But it's all on GitHub. So like the new compiler, the new runtime, like everything is all on GitHub. So developers can go with. Developers started to like that. So .NET Core really started to take off. It's the newer language, so like it will feel good to work in. It'll feel natural, like, oh, this just makes sense.
Are we working .NET Core?
We will be learning .NET Core.
Great.
The great news, so the majority of the industry is still in .NET Framework, but as .NET Core matures and gets more features and gets more stability, more and more companies are starting to adopt it. So like I would say about 2/3 are on Framework and 1/3 are on Core, but everyone's moving to Core. Like that's just how things are. People are like, yeah,
How much
And-
of a difference is there between the two?
maybe 10 to 15%.
Okay.
So
like
It's like an upgrade. It's like
yeah.
It's an update.
It is. It's the same update.
It's like a tune.
The biggest differences are where things are configured, and also dependency injection is embraced and not a add-on that was added late game.
So with our experience coming out of here, and of course continuing learning afterwards, if we found ourselves presented with like a nice job working with .NET Framework, would we relatively easily be able to make that jump?
Yeah, it's everything is still an MVC app. It still uses the same syntax.
Model view control.
Yeah, it still uses the same ideas. It still uses an entity framework. It still uses like everything about all the ideas are the same. Just the way that it's configured is a bit differently. Some of the syntax are a bit there, and .NET Framework has a bit more extra features there. And of course, the ecosystem is going to be bigger because the language has been around for 20 plus years versus 3. So it's one of those, you'll adapt and be like, oh, this is nothing.
Would you recommend that us coming? I'm probably going to do it regardless of whether you recommend it. But coming out of this program, would you recommend trying to learn Xamarin?
Xamarin, yeah, we've had students do that.
Okay.
And they've had hit or miss experience with it.
Okay.
So you
It's,
can program everything.
yeah. That's one of those like, hey, we can do everything. We can get it all platforms natively.
How much different from C#?
So it still uses C#. It's going to be the same as if we used React Native. So it's the language and the concepts are still the same, but like you're still dealing with the stresses and struggles of native environments.
Yeah.
So
Would it maybe be better to hold off on that until I have a job that needs it?
no, I mean a lot of what a few students have done was actually make, so they'll make a final project. Your final projects will be API based. They'll have a React front end. They're like, oh, I'm going to make a native phone app that talks to my API, that mirrors my web front end. So like that's pretty awesome. So they do that as kind of like an after graduation project to kind of still keep them.
Okay, that's something that I would like to do with my app is continue on and have like a mobile app for it.
Mm-hmm.
So you would recommend probably Xamarin for that?
I would say Xamarin for that.
Okay.
Just because that would be right up your wheelhouse.
Cool.
All right, so it's how we feeling. We all kind of have a better foothold of like what's to come. All right.
Sure. What's to come? No.
Oh, but you know how C# is now in a better context.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's 10:45. Let's take a quick 5-minute stretch break, and then we'll come back and we'll jump into actual code.
Let's go say mean things to the Ruby nerds.
Yeah.
I think that the new cohorts have moving forward.
Yeah. Be of course, naturally be respective of them.
Oh,
learning
yeah,
and
of course.
that, yeah. Don't break any more coffee lids.